Mr. Pebley, I would like to address my first question to you. The EPA and the Army Corps issue guidance rather than regulations on water subjects to the Clean Water Act. And this happened despite the fact that there were over 66 comments to the 2008 guidance. Do you believe that by bypassing the regulatory process, limited opportunities for addressing small business concerns?
We would, as AGC, we would ask that the EPA and the Corps of Engineers jointly work on rulemaking, regulatory rulemaking, and not reopen the statute. And in looking at the rulemaking, try and establish some clear and consistent definitions, because that seems to be where a lot of the issue comes up. Is there's words that are used, but there's no definitions as to what certain words mean, and that has caused a lot of confusion. And I think if we were to throw it back into the EPA and Corps, that they could work things out, and it'd be better for everybody.
Mr. Gray, many of those 66,000 comments that came from small businesses and family farmers, do you believe that the final guidance incorporated input from those comments that were submitted?
I think from a practical standpoint, like for example on dairy farms, which I'm familiar with, where we have sod waterways, and coming from the northeast where we have drainage ditches, we have tile, we have filter strips. I think what we're doing here is opening up a can of worms if we delete the term navigable waters, because then we're open to almost anything. And I think that really worries my dairy producers who have small areas on their farms that are wetlands, but also in the normal practices that farmers do to conservation practices, such I mentioned, such as sod waterways. These could all fall under the Corps and EPA, and that's what really concerns us. We don't think they've been taken into account enough.
Mr. Chilton, there are two major cases in the last decade affecting the landscape of waters subject to federal regulation. With the court split in the recent Rapanos case, it seems these matters are complicated further. So in making investments, small farmers, do you account for the interpretations that have or may come out of the courts?
Absolutely. And thank you for the question. The Rapanos decision was kind of like a light from heaven, which, in my opinion, reined in a bureaucracy who had expanded the idea of what a navigable river is. Let me be very clear. In our area, I mentioned dry washes. Well, all of our dry washes run into Yellow Jacket dry wash. Yellow Jacket dry wash runs into Arivaca dry wash. Arivaca dry wash runs into the Raleigh dry wash. And then it goes another 20 miles and it seeps into the sand of the desert. It never reaches another river. It just seeps in. So why should we in our area be subject to the Clean Water Act, period? And my view of Rapanos is that we're not. However, the Corps of Engineers in our Tucson area is determined to, at this very moment, I talked to people trying to get a permit, at this very moment is trying to say that yes, we have jurisdiction. It's absolutely ridiculous and it does hurt, and I will never do anything that requires a permit.
Mr. Cruz, certain farming activities are currently exempted from regulation and permit requirements under the Clean Water Act. So these exemptions were designed to cover basic farming activities and include plowing, cultivating, and harvesting. Have these protections continued to reflect the realities of modern-day farming operations?
Well, Madam Chairwoman, I think, first of all, I agree with the comments made by the other panel members about the concerns with regard to your question. I think one of the safeguards that we have today when it comes to agriculture is how prior converted cropland is treated currently under the Clean Water Act. One of the real concerns, whether you're a livestock producer or a row crop producer, is that removing the word navigable from the Clean Water Act and changing how prior converted cropland is treated is of great concern for a couple of reasons. The litigation aspects are just overwhelming, but also the value of one's land, which is a private property rights issue. And as I stated in my testimony, many times a farmer and rancher's land is their 401k. So if you were to change that from the way it is treated now, it could drastically reduce the value of one's land. And so those are some of the real concerns we have, that some of the safeguards we have now, as you mentioned, might be taken away, and in fact I think undoubtedly would be taken away if the word navigable is removed.
Okay, I would like to ask my next question to either Mr. Schellenberg or Mr. Pevley. The American Recovery and Reinvestment Act intent is to bring the money out to the states, the city, and get those ready shovels projects going. We hear anecdotal stories that some projects are on hold, and it seems related to your industries that water permits may be an obstacle to getting those shovel-ready projects up and running. I just would like to hear from any of you if you have seen any activity from either the Army Corps or EPA to expedite permit applications for Recovery Act projects.
Well,
yes.
I have not seen anything from the EPA or the Corps to expedite permits, and this is a major concern. Even though plans may be ready for projects and they may be ready to go, if you don't have those permits, you're not moving ahead. That's why a lot of people see paving projects, because they can do paving projects that don't require permits. But the utility work and stuff like that, the great majority of those projects, at least out in Oregon, do require those permits, and so the shovel ready for a lot of stuff, it just doesn't happen because of the permits. Even though the plans are sitting there and the projects are ready to go, the permits are delaying them.
Any other witness who would like to comment?
I would
Yes,
just like
Mr.
to comment on that. We, in the state of Texas, we have not seen that many dollars come out of the stimulus package yet. There was some highway projects that have come out, like Mr. Schellenberg brought up, that were basically repaving existing roadways because they were quick and easy and didn't require any permits. But in the past, we have had some bridge projects where we had contracts signed. We were told to go to work by the state of Texas. We go to mobilize out there, and then they realize, oh, we don't have a 404 permit, or well, we've applied for it, but it hasn't come back yet. So our whole operation stops, waits for the Corps to issue the permit, which they typically aren't in a real big hurry on that because they're dealing with a state agency, and sometimes there might be some turf issues, and we're left holding the bag with 15 guys standing around trying to do a project. So it has been an issue in the past. Yes, ma'am.